Good evening, good morning, good night, good second breakfast, whenever you are, wherever you are. My name is Laura González, and I welcome you to Lunatic Mondays on Circle Podcast. Today, I have an author that I'm dying to, start asking questions. Paula Victoria is a Filipino Jewish palmist and interior designer living in Los Angeles. She is the palmist behind P is for Palmistry, offering palmistry readings focused on personal strengths for children and adults. And she is the author of In Your Hands, a kid's guide to palmistry, illustrated by Elisa Marie. Beautiful illustrations, by the way. And I'm so happy to have you on the show. Please welcome Paula. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be on the show. I'm excited to share whatever comes up. And it's amazing that we're finally here with the book. It's out in the world and I'm excited to chat about it.
That is so fantastic. I was a few months back. There's never scarcity of authors. Thank you, God, as we have all this plethora of talented people writing
Hmm.
stuff and bringing stuff to the forefront. And as a as a witch, as a teacher, as a diviner, people always ask me, then you read palms, and I'm like, no, that's not what I do. I'm doing tarot or just consultation, kind of like channeling or whatever. And I asked Sarah Beck, is there any books out there? Is there anything coming? And she said, oh yeah, there's a palmistry book that is coming up. The way my eyes lit up, I'm like, oh my God, for kids? Is this for kids? And she said yes. And then I say immediately, like, please put me on the short list to interview this author. Um, and then of course, Red Wheel Weiser came through, and we got you here finally. But I was genuinely very, very excited. I had no idea, Paula. I had no idea how immense this world of palmistry is. And so I'm very glad that you actually put in a book. And for adults who don't have children, or for people who their children are grown up, or if you want to get into, there's no better way of learning anything than if you get a book for kids. So
Hmm.
this is fantastic. But before we get into the nitty gritty and start talking about the book, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into this divination system that is one of the oldest ones? But
Yes.
tell us your origin story, Paula.
Yeah, I would love to. So I hear that a lot, by the way, with I do tarot, I channel, I'm into astrology, but then palmistry has sort of been this off limits thing that people are scared to approach or they don't know how to approach. And there's so many reasons for that. And I'm sure that that will come up in many ways in our conversation. I personally started learning from my Lola, my grandma, on my mom's side. And she raised me, my grandparents raised me along with my mom at home. And she was not a professional palmist. She wasn't a palm reader per se, but she somehow got information about it as a superstitious Catholic in that time. A lot of the family didn't know she was sharing this with me until the last 10 years or so. And so, my grandmother would teach me basics like the lifeline, the texture of the hands, the love line, the direction in which they go in the garden as we were gardening. And I grew up in the garden with her. We had a lot of succulents. If you look at my childhood photos, hopefully I'll post one on Instagram soon. I've been kind of combing through them. There's a lot of them in the garden. There's a million pots in the background. Before this Instagram aesthetic of the perfect looking garden, it was just this garden of all of the plants that she nurtured and propagated. And then she loved roses. And so roses show up a lot in the book illustrations, especially towards the beginning intro of the book, with my story of how I started. Um, she had like I believe 27 something around that varieties of roses that she liked to grow that she just collected over time. And I learned a lot about nature and caring for nature and speaking with nature, which is a lot of the pre-colonial practice in the Philippines that kind of
Mhm.
made its way through, I guess, where my family is now in practicing Catholicism. And so I loved it. I really took to gardening. I really took to being outdoors with her, and then I really took to palmistry. And there was a lot of comparison between the veins in a leaf and the lines of the hand and um, tree branches and water flowing. And I think a lot of that over time, I pieced together, because I learned so long ago, I must have been like 7 or 8 in the garden with her. I
Mhm.
know I learned basics from her, and then I would go and sit in bookstores and find the books, like the few books I could find on palmistry, and sit there in the aisle while my family was shopping. They could just leave me there and I could just be there for hours. And it became my mode of getting to know the world and getting to know people and understanding people. And there's a lot of validity in it. And there's no denying it. And I feel like my practice very much started literally like seeing what's physically there. And I truly believe that. I feel like it starts there with any practice, especially in, you do tarot and learning that you see the images, and Sarah does this so well in her deck in her kids' book for tarot, where you study the imagery and what does that mean to you and how do you interpret the image that's there. But then it becomes this intuitive practice and it becomes something much more beyond the physical depiction or the textures and what you're feeling. So I really believe that it grows that way. But I think over time, as a kid, I was interested in it. I became interested in other things as a kid. I was very into mythology. I was always into occult practices and magic of whatever I could find in suburban Texas of
Mhm.
that in, Barnes and Noble. And I did my best to learn and grow in that way. And I would read novels with witchcraft in it. And I took to it so naturally. It was like I was always meant to find it. And then, adulthood happened, high school happened, college happened, and then I went off and it was always there in the background, but I was just trying to get by. I was trying to survive. I was trying to find my place in the world. And then it wasn't until um grad school. I met my wife actually in grad school. And before she was my wife, we were trying to stay friends. And then we finally decided to go on a date and go on a few dates. And then finally, I was like, can I see your hand out of nowhere? And I hadn't asked someone it felt like something opened again. Like in forever, I hadn't actively practiced and actively looked at someone's hand in person aside my own. Um, and that's how it all started again. And she promoted this and pushed me to start this as a practice. And she was amazed at what palmistry was all about. So yeah, it's been a really roundabout journey in finding it again, and I'm so grateful that I did. But it's now become a very deep ancestral practice for me because that's how it started. And I feel like there is something there where I connected so naturally because maybe there's something that was lost in colonization and history and generational trauma where there is a practice in the Philippines of palmistry in many cultures. And I didn't realize that until actually probably the last couple of years. And no one in my family practices that, but that's, I think, how it was found. My grandmother, we found out, learned from a woman who was in the neighborhood. She was sort of like the neighborhood community witch, where people would call on her and she would come to the house and my whole family would come and we're all in the neighborhood in Manila when we were all in Manila. And this was back when my mom was a child and she would do readings for the family. And apparently she came more often for my grandmother than most of the family knew. Who knows how true that is? That's what we've learned through some family members that my grandmother did rely on her and call on her for advice and maybe learning and maybe practice. But um, I think that there's probably a long, long lost history in my family from what I feel and from what I what I hear and what I feel from ancestors that it's come through, and I'm happy to practice that however it does come through.
And a couple of things that jump for me hearing you talking about it is, first of all, how important it is that grandma passed it down, right?
Hmm.
She had the wisdom, of course, of the grandmothers, right? To like, no, let it die and pass it down.
Right.
And the way we learn indigenously, right? Through the stories, through the practice, through hands on the ground, through trial and error, and through sitting with the elders and doing the thing
Yeah.
without understanding that we're learning some ancient
Hmm.
wisdom and some indigenous gold, really. Um, and of course, the Philippines was colonized the same way that Mexico by the Spaniards, and I think they were afraid of their reflection in a mirror. I mean, they were afraid of mirrors as well. So I,
Yeah.
I'm I'm sure that it was everything deemed as demonic and whatever. So F the colonizers, but
Agreed.
it's thank you. It's so wonderful to hear you say that it didn't resurface until you met your wife, and that immediately tugged the strings of my heart because it's like you went from the love of your grandmother learning
Hmm.
this to being rescued by the love of your wife.
Hmm.
So this like full circle, I'm getting goosebumps. The full circle
Me too.
journey of how much love and how much of a fertile soil and natural conducive soil is your wife for you and for
Hmm.
this to grow. So thank you for sharing this because this is not in the book, folks, and it's beautiful to hear it. And then I guess you went ahead and you say, okay, I'm going to write a book and put all this knowledge together. And one of my questions is, mainly, why do it for kids? Why is it
Mm.
important for you that kids learn these things?
Well, I do have to give credit to Moondust Press for reaching out to me, and we connected. And over time, we decided that there's books. Sarah was working on her tarot deck mess book for tarot for kids, and her deck. And my daughter loves that deck. She's 20 months, and she that's like one of her favorite quote unquote toys. It's but she takes to it so naturally, and Sarah did such an amazing job with that. And so that was in the process, that was being put out in the world and being worked on. She was actually working on the illustrations, I think, as we were discussing the start of the palmistry book. And, there's astrology books for kids, and there's all these other modalities, divinatory practices put in books. And then palmistry's always been sort of a chapter in a book. It's never been this whole intensive book. And so Andy at Moondust Press approached me and was like, "Do you want to do a kids book for this?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And I learned, I think, I must have posted something about learning as a kid. And there's something about that. It was an immediate yes when we had the conversation. Something about learning when you're a kid it just sticks with you forever. And even if you forget about it, like, like I did for, however many years, like almost 10 years, it comes back like riding a bike, and exactly like riding a bike. You could learn riding a bike like a kid. You never ride a bike, and I am in LA, I would not ever want to ride a bike, but there are people who ride bikes, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh, I can do this. I can go to a park, I can ride a bike.
Yeah.
And no big deal. Training wheels are off. And I think that um the way I practice palmistry, it's very much about learning about your personal powers, learning about what makes you you, who you are, remembering who you are, the practice of remembering. And yes, you can see things about the future and all those fun things. And kids, I've done a few career days and kid events where kids are always asking, they think they're being funny with the questions they're asking and they're stirring up trouble. And I'm like, no, that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought it up. And there's always a way to stump them with palmistry.
Hmm.
And I think that. Um, there is a way that children can learn to know themselves better and learn the confidence. They see a classmate trying something, they're like, I don't know, will I be good at that? Can I try that? And if you see physical proof, if you can see a way you can get to it, because there's many ways you can arrive to learning something and doing something and growing in an endeavor, there's some confidence and there's a little boost there. And so that's my hope really for the book, is that, yeah, there's a lot of information. I wrote it for my inner child as a very healing practice for me. So in writing the book, I wrote it for kids, but I wrote it for the kids that really wanted to sit in the book aisle like I did as a kid, who
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to learn everything, and not the dumbed down version, the watered down version. Like they really wanted to learn all the details. I mean, kids do it with dinosaurs now. Why can't they do it with the lines and timing and mounts and learn about mythology? And so I wanted to impart that on them, and then let them discover it how they want to in the book and flip through it however they want. But what I've learned in the book being released is that everyone's inner child has sort of fallen in love with the book when they pick it up for their kids and they see it and they're like, oh my goodness, it's so easy, like it's that simple. And I think in part is Moon Dust connected me with Alyssa Marie, the illustrator,
Mm-hmm.
and Alyssa did a wonderful job with the illustrations. I don't think there was a single pass back and revision. I just let her go for it, and she is such a gift of really bringing things to life. And I think that's what makes it so approachable and so easy to learn, because a lot of the verbiage that I use naturally in describing palmistry is about nature and is about it. It is elemental in some sense, but I take it to rivers and branches and trees and leaves exactly. And she creates personalities and characters for each of the hand types that are elemental. Um, and I think it makes it so approachable for people to learn with the visuals. Because to me, I think sometimes my wife reminds me when I'm describing it in a class, it's so natural for you, but for people, like they don't see the language you're seeing in the hand. You have to describe it in a way that they don't know what you're seeing, because I don't real, you forget when you've practiced something for so long that it's not easy for people to, it's not natural for people sometimes, and it's something that they need to learn and grow with. And so I think being a kid and learning it is like the best place to do it. And palmistry is such a great practice to pick up that way. And I think a big mission I have with palmistry is to squash the fatalistic nature of it, where it's somehow turned into this thing that's become this spooky way you find out when you're going to die.
Yes.
And you can't. So if some person tells you when you're going to die from a palm reading, if for some reason they know when you're going to die from their own practice, that's not from palmistry. That's from something else.
Yeah.
So palmistry, you learn about energy, you learn about your personality, you learn what you've come here to do and what tools you have to achieve that. And you can change how you go about doing that, right? You can push and twist fate and, decide you're going to do something differently, and maybe fate will pull you back in, and maybe fate will allow it to go the way you choose. And I think that that needs to come back. And I think that um, in every cultural practice that I have learned of in passing, have studied in books, from what has been written down at least, it's not about that. It's not about the fatalistic nature. It's about healing. It's about strategy. It's about personality. It's about your place in a society back when, we were all in smaller communities of, people would learn if they're meant to be in the temple, or they're meant to be a war leader, or they're meant to be a healer from your hands. And so why now are we scared? It's sort of like how we are removed from nature in society now because capitalism doesn't want to bring us there, because it's scary and it's something that they can't control sometimes. You try so hard to control nature and you see things like, unfortunately, the earthquake in the Philippines has expanded the land overnight. And it's a big reminder of we have no control over nature. We don't have control over things sometimes. So um, I think that it's a way of finding that in yourself and finding what you have and deciding how you want to approach things and how you want to grow. So that's my hope for these kids who pick up the book and the adults who pick up the book, you know, of
Definitely. You know, one of the things is truth, because I started learning English when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And when people sometimes, I know I have an accent because an accent is a mother tongue
yes.
refusing to let their child go. And
Hmm.
I have an accent because I'm bilingual. You have a
Yes.
problem with that? Be bilingual. But um, the dexterity, right? The ability to speak and to make it an everyday, to the point that now when I speak Spanish, people look at me like, "What, you speak Spanish?" Like, yeah, Mexico. Like, what else? But um, you are absolutely correct. When you learn as a child, when you start learning as a child, it's like you never forget, and you start like integrating these things, right? And same when I started learning like divination and how to make heads and tails of the things that I will see, because I started with visions. I have visions in my head. And then at
Hmm.
14, I grabbed the tarot. And because I stumbled into tarot, Paula, because if I had stumbled into your book, then it would have been palmistry, right? Um, but Hollywood and colonization and patriarchy and all these oppressive systems, right, that see anything that is indigenous, natural, close to nature, as it has to be demonic, it has to
It's
be
evil.
evil,
It's
it has to be about death and dying,
hmm
because they don't understand, um, again, right, with the Philippine culture and the Mexican culture being, I lovingly tell people that we're cousins, until one person got really offended, so I try not to do it as
no,
much
no.
anymore. But I think that our cultures are cousins. At least we
Yes,
were abused by the same abuser.
I
So,
agree.
you
Yeah.
know, at least we're trauma bond.
Hmm.
But, not to say the least. But how our traditions were tried to be erased and then taken out of context, commodified by the colonizers and the oppressor systems, and then
Hmm.
made into something evil.
Yeah.
And then 500 years later, come back to it like, oh, well, science now proves, get the heck out of here, because we haven't
Okay,
needed
science.
science forever. But good for you, academia, that science is now proven this, that, and the other. Um, they're now doing floating gardens here in Chicago, and they're like, oh, the innovation of floating gardens. And I'm like,
Mm,
Mexica Chinampas would like to have a word with you, because what do you mean? But I digress.
thousands of years old. Yeah.
Right, thousands. But I digress. Um, yes, indeed, the book is a work of art. It You can see how the love exudes on every page, and I love the illustrations. And I'm for one of those people that thought, the narrow minded thought of, well, you don't know something, you just don't know. And I thought you could get your palm read one and done, and that's it, right?
A lot of people do.
And I think that's why, I think this is my theory. Maybe that's why people don't really like try to learn or investigate or research, right? Because we think like you get it read one time and then that's it and you're done.
Hmm.
It blew my mind in a way that I cannot even express with words. How many parts of the palm reading exist? Because folks,
Hmm.
once you get your book, you get the book in your hands. In your hands. Um, you can tell the book place that you have a kid. That's fine. You don't have to disclose that it's for you. Um, but it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna remember everything, but it's like the size of the palm, the size of the fingers, the size of the thumb, the orientation of the thumb, then the lines, of course, like the deep lines, and then the little lines, and then little markings and little wiggles and stuff that are within it, and then the shape of their fingertips. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what?
Everything, everything.
I
And
was
everyone's
like,
got a favorite thing to learn first, you know?
well, I love that the size is so concise. And I was reading, because I was reading, and my husband and I were at the laundromat. We were waiting for the dryer to be done, and I'm reading. I'm like, let me see your hand. And he's like, what? I'm like, let me see your hand. And I discovered that he has like the very square like palm, which
Ah,
is the earth, I think.
Earth, because are the fingers the same size as
The
the
fingers
palm?
are the same size.
Yes, Earth hands, my
And
faves.
I'm like, you have earth hands. And he's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know what you do. And then I'm looking at my hands and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I have I think it's fire, right?
Fire. Mm-hmm.
The very rectangular, and like the fingers are long, but not as long as
Uh-huh.
you know, and just that. And that's like, folks, I'm telling you, folks, this is like on the first 10 pages, right? And I'm already interpreting my husband and my hands. So it is very accessible. I love how you broke it down step by step by step by step. The drawings, the illustrations, incredibly valuable, because sometimes, like your wife say, you may say the ridge, the deep, the river, the branches, and I'm like, what do they mean? And then, oh, okay, the illustration tells you what it's all
Mm-hmm.
about. So tell us a little bit about the process of actually putting it together, deciding how is it gonna go,
Mm-hmm.
uh, how you pack your whole knowledge into like however many pages,
So it's
120.
it's it ended up being, I think, double the size that Moondust was looking for, because it's a
Oops.
kid's book, but it was also it's their first middle grade book. So it's their first 8 to 12. They do a lot of board books and books for
Oh,
younger
okay,
children.
okay.
And
Uh-huh.
so this is sort of like these kids are growing up that we wrote those books for. Let's graduate them to thicker books and books where they are able to sit down a little longer and absorb information and learn something. So I can't remember the exact number of pages or words they had. I think it was words that they had asked for. And then I just wrote. I didn't think about it. I was like, let me just let it. That's how I write everything. I just free flow, let everything come together, and then I go back and I organize everything. And um, like I had mentioned before, I didn't want to water down the information because I think kids need to learn a certain way. I wanted to give them more and then they can decide what they want to learn. And so far it's come across great. Kids will pick it up and they're like, wow, look. And then they read their whole family, which is so cool to see now. I
Mhm.
didn't know what to expect when I was writing it, but I was like, this feels right. This feels intuitively right. I'm going to keep it in. I'll just send this draft to Moondust and ask them um, what needs to come out of the book. I'll let them edit the book, but I'm going to put everything in there and just see because I think it's all important. And so I wanted to write it similarly to some of my favorite larger scale, textbook academic level palmistry books, but really, really, really simplify down the knowledge of. So yes, it's simplified from what you could learn, but it's still like a lot. It's
Mhm.
enough, you could do full readings with the book information. And I wanted to give examples for kids to really wrap their head around it, sort of like you would see in a kid's science textbook or so. I put examples in there for each hand type of examples of what to look for. And then I wanted to add in examples of each of the different mounts, which are, if you look at your hands, there's areas that are higher and lower on your palm on the inside. And those are areas that are more dominant in your personality. To put it very simply, there are areas that are more dominant in your personality. And so I put examples in the book of if you have a higher, let's say, Venus mount, here is something you could try, or here's something something with your grown-up that you could try. And if you have, I think the example is if you have a mercury mount that's dominant, try setting up a lemonade stand or something that you're a craft that you're working on and try selling it to family and friends or your neighbors, because you have a knack for business. And did you know that? And so, sometimes there's a wow, I didn't know. So it was very much a dumping, I think, of my inner child's knowledge of what she learned, and what she wanted to share, because it came from something that was not me sitting down and doing all the research. Like, yes, of course, it's from research, but I wanted it to come from a place of what really lit me up as a kid, if that makes sense.
Hmm. It's beautiful and it is really informative, and I love the examples, and I love, again, I love the illustrations, and I always like to give their flowers to the illustrators, right? Whether
Yes,
it's that
absolutely.
they're illustrating the tarot or a book, in this case, for children's book. But I didn't realize, and now it makes sense, that it's for middle child age.
Hmm.
And there's another detail of the book that I really, really like, that you repeat a couple of times, is um, and if you don't memorize all of this information, or if you don't want to do like a complete analysis of the hand, focus on the things that call to you. I don't know, I'm paraphrasing. Because you said,
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
you're not going to remember everything, not everything is going to call on you, not everything is going to be of your interest.
Hmm.
So focus on the things, kind of like focus on what sticks, right?
Yes.
And because I'm also an educator, Paula, and then that's what I tell people, like when people start learning about occult um, systems, whether it's tarot or magic or what people consider nowadays, being a witch, which is like you're supposed to do divination, you're supposed to do spells, you're supposed to do
As
numerology,
opposed
you're
to.
supposed to be like angel numbers and working with dry herbs and with fresh herbs and with tarot and with astrology and with astronomy, and I'm like, you know what? Each witch has her niche. Like, you don't have to
Yes.
eat it all, but just do what resonates and what feels right for you. And when I noticed that on the book, I'm like, oh, a person after my own heart. Because, yeah, like, that is another Western, whatever the heck that means, cultural imposition, right? Like, oh, you have to be all to know all and to, and all, and otherwise you're not the expert or you're not the knowledgeable person. And the truth is, like, it's like learning a language. Maybe
Hmm.
you don't know the academic language of palmistry, but you know how to say good morning, good evening, and good night, something like that.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, and I think every book, a lot of books I feel like should be like that, where you get stuck on the first chapter of a book where you're learning a skill of some kind and then you're already turned off because that's not what resonates with you. I have a background in art history, and so from high school, I got into art history because I was very into archaeology and ancient Greece, like pre-written histories. I was very interested in, and when you start learning about paintings, and you have to do a lot of slide ID, and you have to write all the information, the date, the name, the artist, anything like that. If it's prehistory, the culture that it comes from, and the general time frame, and it's so hard to remember things sometimes that people are like, you're nuts for trying to do this major and learn all the dates and how do you do that? But everyone has their own way of doing it. And I feel like the way I approach palmistry is the way that I approach learning about art and about artifacts, where there's something in the image, like, so there's something in your palm, right? There's something in the image or in the palm where you can pick out the date, or you see the date, or you see something that reminds you of a certain period of time, or the way someone, if it's like, let's say, a Renaissance painting, the way that the proportions are done, or so there's something that sticks with everyone, and not everyone looks at a painting and sees that. Maybe you learn a date from knowing when the artist lived, and you get very into the artist's birthday and their life, and then that's what reminds you of something in the painting. So there's no, as an educator, I'm sure you see that too. Like kids pick up on, or adults, anyone, right, picks up on something so differently. And I see that sometimes when I have a curious sitter, where they'll say, "Oh, I noticed on my hands that this finger curved a certain way, and then now it's curving this way," and it's things that I never would look at first. And
Hmm.
I'm like, yes, focus on your fingers. Look at your fingers, then that's where you should start.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I think that that's the perfect way. And I think that, um, again, to give Alyssa a lot of credit for illustrating the book so beautifully.
Absolutely.
Um, I did, that's the exact page that I was thinking of, the check-in point.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you don't mind me
yeah,
interrupting for a
go
second,
for it.
for folks that are listening right now, you're all listening to us right now, of course, here on Lunatic Mondays. When we finish talking here on Lunatic Mondays, you can run to my YouTube, and then you can find the YouTube video, and then you get to see the illustrations that I've been showing throughout the whole chat. But you were gonna tell us about the check-in point.
Yes, so when I wrote the book, I was like, that's a lot of information. Let's have like a water break. Let's have a point where we look back at everything, because the first half of the book, where the check-in point, sort of bookends, is a lot of information you could just start with, and you could leave the book for years and you'd be okay with it. And then the next part of it is even more detail. So sometimes you just need that breather to practice what's in the first half of the book. And so I wanted to summarize all of that in a check-in point for kids, in a way that they could see it in someone, right? Like I think the example I use is a fictional character, Sage. And Sage has this kind of hand, Sage has these mounts. This means this about Sage. You could talk to Sage about their powers in this way. And then now you can look at Sage's life flow, and where Sage's life is heading. Now that you know that information, now you can look at this information. So very cause and effect. One of my daughter's favorite books. So now that I wrote that, I think of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and she loves that because it's like very cause and effect of like, if you do this, then you can see this. And so I think it's really important to kind of see palmistry like that, in a cohesive study. But also it's same with tarot, right? Like I struggle to learn tarot. I tried so many. I read for myself, but not professionally. So I do read, but I didn't pick it up as naturally as palmistry. And I know that there's different ways you can learn, where you pull a card every day, or you study the imagery, or you only focus on the major arcana first. And it's the same thing with palmistry, right? If you're having a hard time wrapping your head around it, just focus on the lifeline. Look at your lifeline for a whole year if you're having a hard time with it, and track it week to week, or just look at the depth of the lines in your hand and study it day to day, and put it in a folder in your phone of every Monday. You take a photo of your hand. What does it look like 6 months from now? So it is a ritual and it's a practice, and there's many ways you can come back to it, and there's no right way to learn it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Also, with the fact that, for example, my analogy that I use for divination with my apprentices is we all can talk, unless you were born with the inability to speak, obviously. But we all have vocal cords. We all can push air through our vocal cords, and then whether you learn English, Spanish, Tagalog, or any other language, you're going to speak in that language, right?
Hmm.
Can we all sing? Technically, we can, because once you can speak, you can sing.
Hmm.
There's only one thing, you guys, and there will never be another Freddie Mercury, right? Freddie Mercury had the bone structure, the overbite, this, that, and the other. No one in the planet would have that exact pitch,
Hmm.
talent, bone structure, etc. So Freddie Mercury had a unique ability that made him
Hmm.
Freddie Mercury. And so does Adele, and so does, I need to update my references. I don't know.
No, those are
Uh,
great references.
but they're very old artists, older for the older demographic. I don't know, Chaperone. There's only one,
Yeah.
you know. So I think the same goes for a tool, right?
Hmm.
Everybody and anybody can grab a tarot or a palmistry or runes or corn or ashes or whatever. You might be naturally talented for certain divination tools, and you might
Hmm.
not be. You might have to struggle, you might have to practice, because even Adele says to this day that she has to go singing lessons all the time, right?
Hmm.
And you might think, like, what? Like, you are the Adele. Well, yeah, practice makes perfect. And it's
Yes.
that discipline, that consistency, that visionary uh, drive that you were just speaking about, right?
Hmm.
Because I learned tarot first in a very like intuitive way, and
Hmm.
I read very intuitively for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And then I came through um, the actual numbers, colors, the position of the card, the major arcana, the lesser arcana, the relationship with like the color and the position in this and that and the other. And it did not diminish the intuitive aspect of it. It
Hmm.
actually enhances it.
Yes.
And now it makes it more complete, right?
Hmm.
So I imagine that for people who are naturally curious, and who are naturally curious, children,
Hmm.
right? They're
Yes.
gonna look and they're gonna look under your hand and they're gonna look on their hand and they're gonna look again and then a few months later again, and like you say, that's an excellent practice. Um, there is a question I'm dying to ask you
Hmm.
before our time runs off, and I'm very curious about it. And I don't recall if it is in the book, and if it is in the book, please forgive me. But
Hmm.
I don't recall if you speak about. I know there's aging, but like accidents or like in my case,
Yes.
I have a. When you were talking about the mounts, I've been having a tendonitis problem on this hand.
Uh-huh.
So my Venus
Hmm.
is inflamed all the time. And if you look at my both my right and left hand, my left hand is kind of thin and my right hand is kind of
Yeah.
it's big, it's thick, but it's because of the injury. So I'm dying to ask you, not for you to interpret my hand, no, but to ask you, what, how do we approach injuries? Aging, I think, is part of it. It's not an injury, or cuts or deep changes that are
Yeah.
from external or from injuries. How does that affect?
Yes, that's a
Uh,
great question,
yeah,
actually. So, and it brings up another point as well. Everyone reads differently. Some people read into that a lot more than I do. I don't, there's certain things I will focus on, yes. So yours I'll get to in a second. But there are some people who will read like, oh, like I stabbed this part of my hand on accident doing like gardening. What does that mean? And I will bring it up. I'll say, if you were to see it this way, it could mean this. Is it relevant to you? But I don't make it like a definite fact of that's definitely what's going on. It's a warning or a sign, right? Um, I think that sometimes they're, selectively, so it would have to be a specific case in a reading that someone comes to me with, right? If something does happen in an area, it could mean, I will give an example. I have a friend who studies oh man, I can never say it right, but it's the study of your nails and how you can use nails in your craft and in your ritual. So that is a whole separate thing. And her middle finger, the Saturn nail broke off. And Saturn is in Aries, I believe, right now. And I'm putting her on blast on this. I won't say her name, but
no,
she's having some issues with that placement right now. And so we were joking that it broke off because it's just been a troubling time with the Saturn placement right now.
yeah,
So there are certain, if you use it in your practice, especially if you're doing things specifically to strengthen aspects with your nails or with your fingers or with ring wearing. Yeah, I think it means something, right? Because that's spirit coming through and trying to communicate. But uh, I don't make it like a huge change. If you get injured, let's say you have hand surgery, people come to me sometimes and they might be missing a finger or they have hand surgery. If you are missing a finger, that's not going to dictate that you don't have charisma anymore. That's not going to make you a bad leader if if you're missing a finger. That's just what happened in this lifetime, right? That's a lesson for you to learn on its own separately, right? Or just, something that happened to you and if like there's surgery that made it up into your palm, right? And it may have affected a line, I sort of read over it. I don't make that about, well, that caused a break in your lifeline at 35, and that means that some big change is going to happen. Like, I won't read into it like that. When it comes to inflammation on the hand or certain areas are inflamed, there are sometimes other areas of the hand that you can look at where it will show causes of inflammation. So there might be a reason why you're inflamed there. Sometimes if you have inflammation and it's on Venus, like it's on your thumb,
Mm-hmm.
and it's here, a Venus is all about indulgence and it's about the five senses. And so maybe something about indulging in something might be causing the inflammation, right? So that's a way you could interpret it. It doesn't mean that's the reason. Maybe, it's from arthritis or, gout or something, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes those things are inflamed by indulgence, but sometimes it's genetic, right? And you can also see if there are genetic health things in the hand, right? You can read that way. So, I say if someone comes to me for a reading, that and they know another palm reader, I'm not going to feel like you cheated on me. I think that every person should experience different readers' interpretations, and that goes for any practice and tool, because everyone intuits differently. Everyone
Yeah.
comes to answers differently, and the odds of them saying something the same, if it's meant to be heard, are so high and creepy for someone who's never experienced it, but really eye-opening. And so I think it's necessary if you come to me for a palm reading and you're looking for where am I going next in life? Why is dating not working, right? Come to me for a palm reading and then go see a tarot reader. Go get your natal chart done. Go for any kind of intuitive reading. Go for a mediumship reading. Have someone help you get in touch with your ancestors or your guides, right? Because many times someone comes to me and they're like, I just heard that from another reader, actually. And that's when you're like, that's a yes, or that's an immediate
Mm-hmm.
flag, you
Yeah.
know? So that's a really good question.
And the thing with the uniqueness of the reader, right? Because I also share with like my apprentices or whoever listens, you can have 20 healers
Hmm.
lined up, and each healer is holding their bag of medicine. And the person who needs the healing is gonna V-line to
Yes.
the person that is carrying the medicine they need, you
Yes.
know. So competition what? Like there is no competition. There is no stepping on toes or, like false modesty or anything. Like no, like you bring your medicine into the world and the people
Hmm.
that need that medicine are going to gravitate towards you,
Yes, absolutely.
And they're
And
gonna learn. Good.
you can also feel it as a reader or as a healer. If someone comes to you and maybe they were recommended and they're not feeling it, but they do it anyway, you're not going to connect. And so if you're learning and someone sits with you and you don't feel that connection, don't panic, right?
Yeah.
It happens sometimes where some people you sit down, you can see their whole life, you can see years where things happen, you can see when they're going to get engaged, when they're going to find a job if they got laid off. And there's some people who sit with you and you're like, I don't see anything right now. Like
Yeah.
I see that there's things coming up, there's no definite timing. I don't see it. And that's okay.
Yeah. And that happens with tarot too.
Hmm.
And there's something
I'm
that I
sure.
also tell my apprentices. Sometimes it's not flowing, and if there is a paying client, you give them their money back and send them their
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
And if it's a friend or a family member, like maybe cleanse yourself, maybe wait for another day, maybe,
Hmm.
sometimes we're not, because we're not machines.
Right.
We're not machines. And sometimes we're just not making that connection.
Yeah, and the big thing I talk about in the book too, which is what I hope people get from the book, if anything, is energy exchange and the importance of energy exchange and doing it correctly and ethically. And I hope I break it down in the book for kids to really grasp in a first pass way where they can be introduced to it. But it is energy exchange. So if something doesn't work, if it doesn't work out, refunding, right? Or cleansing are really big. So that's a really, really good
Some
point.
kind of
It's
reset.
all about that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
If you're a bibliophile and you put your nose on this book, is has the most beautiful scent. So the book is called In Your Hands, A Kid's Guide to Palmistry by Paula Victoria and illustrations by the talented Elisa Marie from Mundos Press. Before we close today, I want to ask you, look at the time. This is ridiculous. Um, are you going anywhere after today? Are you doing any book readings, any book signings? Where are you presenting? Tell us about it.
So I don't have any set book readings set up. I want something to sort of click organically. And I think instead of doing a book reading, because it's not, a chapter book, I've been exploring the idea of doing family day handprints. So it's very hands-on, it's in your hands, and it's just an introduction, right? It's less of the, how to and more of the energy exchange and the feeling. So keep an eye out for that. The best way to see when that will be happening, hopefully sometime, in the summer coming up. Or in the fall as well, is through my Instagram and through my website. Both are P is for palmistry
Mhm.
and .com and P dot is for palmistry on Instagram and on TikTok. I will say I do post on Instagram live the most, not Instagram live, but more frequently on Instagram. So you would see it there first. And I hope to see you soon in the LA area, and I hope to travel beyond that sometime in the next year as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we say goodbye today, I want to remind everybody that Circle Podcast is done by volunteers and that we have a plethora of shows. Let me see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 12 episodes a month, give or take. So let me see if I remember this. On Tuesdays, we have Circle Talk on the first and the third Tuesday of the month with Deborah Rose. On the third Wednesday of the month, we have Circle of Nature with Selena Fox. On the first and the third Thursday of the month, we have Urban on Witches with Dia and Kyler. On the second and fourth Friday of the month, we have Songs of the Pagan Tribe with Karen Green. On the first and the third Saturday, we have our bilingual show Pagaos del Mundo with Patricia Finkler, always on the third Saturday on in Portuguese, and then alternative um, first Saturday with Monica Gobin from Argentina and yours truly, Laura González from Mexico/Chicago. I do like 4 a year in Spanish. I don't do as many as I used to. And then, of course, on Sundays, the second and fourth Sunday of the month, we have Pagan Spirit Voices with Rebecca Malky. And obviously, on the second Monday of the month, we have Lunatic Mondays with Laura Gonzalez. That's me. We're all volunteers. You can go to the Circle website and find all of them, or you can go directly to Spreaker and find all of them, or you can go wherever it is that you get your podcast. Please listen, share, and download, if you will, and tell everybody about our work. Tell everybody that's your friend about your work. If you like our work, if you don't like our work, tell your enemies. But tell everybody about our work. And as I repeated already, we're all volunteers. So, um, in my particular case, my 9 to 5, which is not 9 to 5, is like whenever to whenever, is teaching. So you can go to my website, which is bluewitch.org. Blue as the color of the sky, witch is in what I am. Bluewitch.org, and you can go to the learning part of the website, and there's a plethora of classes that you can pick. Full series. I have a series on tarot. I have a series on spells. I have the Siwatatele, Colonizing the Goddess, 2 years. I have the Tlakatatele, Colonizing the God. We're going into like 7 months now. You can pick them up as a series, or you can pick them up on demand, or you can hire me for apprenticeships. Currently not taking that many apprenticeships, but you can sign up for like a waiting list. uh, we're still busy doing the 13 witches, and I have 8 students at the moment.
Ooh.
But eventually in 2027, it will open again for private apprenticeships, I think. And shoot your shot and see if I can squeeze you somewhere for private apprenticeships. And also for tarot readings and or cleansings or other services. If you're here in Chicago, please support Black and Brown, Women on, Indigenous, women and people of color businesses. And you can do that by going to bluewitch.org. Um, and with that said, thank you so much for being here, Paula. I loved your book. I can say without a doubt that now I can add palmistry to my tool belt of tools. I think my inner child has been very happy enjoying all the information and the illustrations and the smell of the book. Honestly, the book, that book smell is just fantastic. The texture is very, if you care about those things, folks, the texture of the book is very inviting. It's very, and the smell, the scent, the colors, everything. So thank you for being here, and thank you for writing the book, and thank you to your Lola for teaching you, and thank you for sharing. With that, I say goodbye, and I leave you the microphone so you can say goodbye to your audience.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I loved the conversation. It was so wonderful to connect. I feel like we understood each other so well with how energy exchange works and our practices work and exploration of it as life goes on works. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You can find the book anywhere that you buy books. You can request it at your local bookstore and they can get it for you. You can find it online anywhere you find books. And I hope you do find it and turn the pages and find your inner child again and practice with your children and bring palmistry back. Bring it back.
Let's bring it back, and
So
you're here.
thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for reminding us. Even if you don't buy the book on that evil online delivery oligarch company, go write a review there. Even if you don't buy the
Yes.
book there, go write a review there. That's the least you can do for a talented author to help people reach this knowledge. So, I mean, if you have no other choice and you want to buy your book there, by all means. But make sure you go there and you write a review. Thank you so much for being here, Paula. Thank you, everybody, for listening. My name is Laura González, and until we meet again, never forget that you are loved. Bye bye.